get more for you now on the case of the mother cleared for murdering her 15-month-old son. Marianne Williams had been accused of poisoning her child Joshua with salt. Prosecutors claimed that she couldn't cope with his severe medical problems. Today, her lawyer criticised those involved in bringing the case.
In far too many cases, as in this case, clinicians are much too prone to point the finger of suspicion at parents who are already vulnerable, having just suffered the death of their child. The verdict today gives us hope that perhaps the general public are learning the lessons which doctors and other agencies have failed to learn, despite previous high-profile cases such as Sally Clark, Trupti Patel and Angela Cannings.
Well, campaigner for wrongly accused parents Rioch Edwards Brown joins us now from South East London. Good afternoon to you. Thanks indeed for joining on this. And
hello.
Some relief there for Marianne Williams today, but a dreadful ordeal that she's been through, and one partly that you would understand very deeply.
Yes, I mean, having been wrongly accused myself, and the reason why I actually set up the campaign is that far too many parents got to actually try and prove their own innocence in, full view of doctors, the legal profession and the police. And what this case quite clearly shows, as the other high-profile cases, is that sometimes the doctors do get it wrong.
Just remind us of your case, Rioch. You were accused wrongly of shaking your baby, weren't you?
Yes, when my son was 6 months old, he collapsed with a fit. We took him to hospital and was subsequently accused of shaking him. What they didn't bother to check, what they didn't bother to listen to from us as his parents, was that he was a premature baby with a traumatic start to life. And in fact, his brain bleed was down to his birth trauma, not through him having been shaken.
And he survived this as well. We should point that out. He's still with us.
Riordan is fit and well, is now attending his first year of secondary school, and that just further proves the point. Not every injury that is upon a child is actually to do with child abuse.
Just give us your take then on the fact that there were supposed to be new rules in place, weren't there? After those dreadful cases such as Angela Canning's, the medical profession, lawyers were supposed to be looking at this area, and they came up with a set of guidelines.
Yeah, no, you see, this is the problem. Guidelines are just that. They're simply guidelines. They can't be enforced, they're not legally binding, and they're certainly not nationwide. What one hospital will practice in one area certainly isn't being carried out by another. And this is the reason why we're saying as a campaign that, unfortunately, like the case we've heard about today, even with the high-profile cases that have been mentioned, nothing is actually going to change. You're still going to have families wrongly accused, and you're still going to have children missed for child abuse. So what's the way forward? Can they learn something from parents like ourselves that have been wrongly accused? Yes, they can. You need something in place called Riordan's Law. We've named that after my son. This is a protocol which is legally binding that needs to be shipped out nationwide. And what it does, it sees all babies where there's a suspicion of abuse or harm looked at by paediatric professionals within the first 24 hours and then reviewed again 14 days later, so that by the time you arrive at that point you've got a clearer medical understanding as to whether this is abuse or accident. And I'm sorry, if guidelines continue and there isn't a legally binding protocol in place, you will find these cases of parents wrongly accused, parents put in prison and families destroyed.
I suppose just to look at it completely from the other side of the fence, though, in some situations there does merit a moment of suspicion, a questioning, doesn't there? It's very difficult to talk about, particularly with someone like you who's been through this dreadful experience of being wrongly accused, but I suppose some people do wonder about whether, on very rare occasions, parents may not be treated with the due suspicion they might deserve.
I've always said, right at the beginning, 11 years ago, and still today, child abuse exists. It won't ever go away. That's the society we live in. But what we can't do is more or less just drag everybody up that comes in with a child that's injured and basically shoot first and ask questions later. What needs to happen is that each child needs to be worked up under his or her own merit. If you're looking at cases like Victoria Clambier, Riordan's Law would deal effectively with that. If you're looking at cases such as Sally Clark's or this lady's case that was passed today, Riordan's law would deal effectively with that. We do have abuse, but we don't have it in every single case. What's the way forward? Let's assess these children, these babies, once they come in at A&E. Let's get them worked up within the first 24 hours and review them 14 days later. And actually, let's pay attention to the facts here, because I think, you know, people are going over the parapet with this one with their helmets on, and we're not, the medics are missing a vital point here. We seem to be moving away from the medicine and the science, and we seem to be relying on fear, fame and fortune. If you look at the kind of cavalier attitude of doctors such as Meadow, who practice his own law called Meadow's Law, and refused to have it looked at or scrutinised, and in fact yesterday was reinstated with simply a slap on the wrist. You're practicing fame and fortune. They make a lot of money on the back of these reports, and some of these are flawed. If you're looking at the fear aspect that a lot of the doctors that use our service talk about, they show quite clearly that abuse does not happen in every single case. So we need Riordan's law.
Rioch Edwards Brown, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, President Bush has